body
And
does
they're
not
talking
have the
about
right
abortion.
to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral.
It's crazy.
And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs
They're
to
talking
agree.
about murdering
The government
babies.
and Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe
Project 2025 started under the Biden watch. Obama, actually.
The freedom to make decisions about one's own body should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it
Well, I won't have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's
Facts. What are you talking about? You'll sign. You're not going to even give it to you.
Now with the 50-50.
What you going to sign?
Essentially 50-50 in both Senate and
Facts.
House.
That was
She's not
bullcrap.
gonna
You
get
see how
the
she
vote.
said that?
She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just
Exactly.
You know what it
I was
reminds me of? When they
surprised
said
President
they're going to
can't
get
do nothing.
student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how
And you will be
unfair that
taunted
would have
again,
been part of the reason they
People.
lost. To the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans, they didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that.
Free use
that they talked
YouTube,
about abortion.
educational
If I
purposes.
could just get a yes or no, because you're running.
Yeah, what he's saying is-
Vance has said that you would.
Y'all making empty promises y'all can't keep.
Well, I didn't
You
discuss
cannot
it
sign
with,
nothing,
JD.
lady. Everything has to go through Congress.
JD.
That's what he said. You don't
And
think we're
I
going to
don't
make it to
mind
Congress
if he
to
has
sign
a
nothing. What are you
certain
talking
view,
about?
But I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. We're wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not
I hear the stutter, guys.
to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people,
That is not
working
true.
women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is,
But yet,
have
you got
to
inflation
travel
at
to
the all-time
another
high.
state, to get on a plane sitting next to strangers, to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable.
But he didn't do it. He said he gave the power back to the states. So each individual state gets to decide how they handle abortion. If you live in Texas and they say no abortions, guess what you gotta do? Move your ass out of Texas. That's what happened. That's what he's saying. He didn't do anything. He gave the power back to each individual to the state to decide how they're gonna do it.
Which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the
She's
other
not ready
thing,
to deal with something.
you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month? Okay.
Because she asked her and she skated around it. She did ask her that.
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
Because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer the
Wade,
question.
you
Would you
could,
veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border
You see
security.
that
We know
they
it's an
keep
issue
calling
that's
him
important
President
to
Trump.
Republicans,
He
Democrats,
was the
voters across
president.
the
She
board
was the
in
damn
this country.
president.
Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions.
You gotta tell
We
me
know
she look black.
since then have dropped
She
significantly.
look
Not
like
at
she
all.
sell.
But my
She look
question
like she
to you
sell
tonight
hair at
is,
the
why
beauty
did the
salon, man. Come
administration
on,
wait
man.
until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings.
You've done
And
way
let
more
me
than
say
that, Heifer.
that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help
Free
those
use,
folks who are
YouTube,
working
free
there
use.
right now overtime trying to do their job.
What was that gonna do?
It would have
1,500, that's
allowed
nothing
us to stem
compared
the
to all
flow
them
of
damn people
fentanyl
that's
coming
walking
into
across
the
this
United
place.
States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need
You
a
guys
leader
believe this?
who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris,
Shut up, bro.
President Trump, on that point, I want to get your
She's
response.
president now. She's vice president, not doing that.
Killed that bill, and successfully so. That would have put thousands
I would have
of
put
additional
1,500
agents and
more officers. I wasn't gonna do a goddamn thing for all these people that's coming across
She
the border.
said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. The people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there. And then showing them in a different
All
light.
got rappers shaking their ass. Get out of here,
People
girl.
don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most
Nah, that's
incredible
fact.
rallies in the history of politics.
His rallies
That's
be
because people want
packed.
to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're
You
a
should have said
failing
that. You have
nation.
rappers
And
shaking
it
their ass
happened
at your rally,
3.5
at your stuff.
years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. what they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
You live in Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports
Not
of specific
Venezuela.
claims of pets being harmed,
Yo,
injured,
I'm
or abused by
done.
individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've seen
this,
people on television.
let me just say here, this is
The people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former secretary of defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive
Are you guys seeing
another
this?
Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump will give you a quick
Yeah,
minute to
but you're
respond.
not it.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody
It's too
does
much
a
for
bad
her.
job, I fire him.
Look at her face.
And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him, so he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me they can write books, with nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy, look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists, they have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well.
I hope you guys are happy.
The largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military. You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11
Key man, I don't know if I should agree with that, but Trump is the man, man.
Look like the authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States.
That is a fact.
And told by their countries,
Nobody
like
can dispute
Venezuela,
that.
don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know
Because
why?
their asses is
Because
here.
they've taken their criminals off the
Facts.
street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to
Yo.
allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted
Girl, bye.
for national
Coming from the
security
prosecutor who
crimes,
locked everybody
economic
ass up that was
crimes,
innocent.
election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward.
I don't know how
that
it
we
went from
turn the
Venezuela
page
to
You ain't answering nothing this man asked you.
this is crazy, bro.
and address the needs of the American people. Address
This-
what we
this
need
stage
to
is
do
too big for
about
her.
the housing shortage, which I have a plan for.
The-
Address what
the
we
housing
must do
shortage,
to
3
We
million.
talk about the criminals that y'all let in the country. How we get
The
here?
price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are
$3 million,
exhausted.
3 million
It's
homes
the
in
same
one
old
term.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened
Facts.
in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown
Facts,
out.
he is winning his stuff.
It's
Ain't nobody saying nothing
weaponization,
about it.
and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're
President Trump.
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States
Yo, if she
Supreme
become
Court
president, babe, I'm moving to Haiti.
recently
son.
ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails. Because certainly we know.
Oh,
now
so
the
he'd just be like,
courtrooms
just like
don't
any
know
other white man in
J.D.
America.
Vance is not
Whoop-de-doo.
gonna stop him. The American people.
Vice President Harris,
Whoop-de-doo.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president,
We got
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
do.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris,
She don't never answer the question.
Never, bro. And young people, and yo, listen, I hope you guys is not falling for the fugazi, man.
I ain't never answered anything, nothing about these damn immigrants that's over here.
Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not
She's a
changed.
mixed breed,
So
baby.
then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of it, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hard-working mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance
What about
of
your daddy?
homeownership,
You got a
when
home daddy.
everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the
Didn't she have a whole daddy?
home builders to increase
Talking
3
cap,
million
big.
homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is
3
related
million
to
homes in her
having-
first
No,
term.
let's talk about the fact that she acting like she ain't had no daddy.
And my focus then on protecting women and children from
This is
violent
crazy.
crime is based on a value.
She's trying to
that
make
is
herself
deeply
feel like
Exactly. Why are you trying to? You had a whole daddy, ma'am. Hold on. That's what we really need to be focused on. Why? My mother worked hard. You had a daddy. Why are you trying to be this poor black woman play? You had 2 parents.
Have not changed.
Man.
And what is important is that
This
there
is
a president
crazy.
who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader.
And you guys are gonna fall for this, bro. She had a whole dad.
Strength is not in
A
beating
whole
people down,
Habibi,
it's in
too.
lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response?
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars. Many, many billions.
That's right, Joe.
And
Tell
when
about
people
it.
see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police.
She lying
In
black.
Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking
I'm
now.
mad she had a whole dad and she just left that out.
Does that sound familiar?
Look at her face.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a liberal.
Yo.
That will do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day 1. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment that she
to.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because
She's scared because she know that this ain't her type of party. It's too much for her. Look at her face. Can you imagine her at the UN? They're gonna make a.
When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when are those, David? When are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about.
The question
you
is
as
no.
president,
The
not
answer is
about
no.
former
We don't.
Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President.
He don't want. He don't have to because he didn't do nothing.
No. So I'm asking him the same question over and over again. The answer is no.
I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States
She was not
incited
there,
a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the
Donald
time
Trump
say?
father's a Jew.
There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president
Yeah,
said,
babe,
the
I ain't
former
gonna lie, that
president
juice
said,
was
stand back
everything, yeah.
and stand by.
That joint was nice and
So
cold.
for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule
Girl, nobody
of
cares
law,
about that.
Yo, it's
and
his
to
face,
end the
baby.
chaos.
Nobody cares
And
about
to
that.
end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear.
But that was
on that
democracy.
day, Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath. if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the
Man,
future.
charge the White House
and not
bloodbath.
go
I said it.
backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both lead this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on
I like
this
that
next issue
J6.
because
That's
it really
fine.
brings us this into focus. Truth in these times.
Well, they talk about
that we're living in.
democracy. That is
Mr.
democracy.
President, for 3.5
Saying, I don't like
years
what's going
after
on. I'm going up
you
to the White House
lost
to
the 2020
talk about
election,
it.
repeatedly
That's democracy.
claim that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide.
What
In the
happened?
past couple of
I
weeks,
say like
leading
it.
up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you
That's
came
the
up a little
epitome of
bit
democracy.
I
Are
say
you,
that.
are you now acknowledging that you lost in
No, I
2020?
don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
say
did
that
say that.
sarcastically, you
But
know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch
Facts,
all of these
though.
pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker, we didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No judge
Republican,
looked at it.
and said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just
Yo,
recently.
did
He
I
said,
show you
"When
the
I win,
video when she
those
was in
people
the
who
rally
cheated
about
on
black
penniless
people? She started
donors,
speaking,
voters,
and
election
she started having an
officials. He says they'll
accent.
be prosecuted
And
to
then
the
when she
fullest
got in front of the
extent
white
law,
people, she
which
started
will
like this.
include long-term prison sentences.
Remind me
One
to
of
show
your
you what this
campaign's
is.
top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny,
And we don't
They
have.
saying he
over
disgraced.
and
He
over
said they a
again,
disgrace.
are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election. It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
The only person who was
I'll give you 1
confused was
minute.
Biden
Hey,
ass.
let me just tell you about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if you weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm okay
President,
with it
Mr.
because
President, your time
I
is up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel
Yo.
Hamas war
Nah,
and
Donald Trump
hostages
is the
still
man.
being held.
I
The
gotta
Americans
respect this
among them.
man.
Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected.
Come on, guys.
Israel
You can't
must be
disagree
able to
with
protect
Trump, man.
innocent civilians. You
Y'all,
said
y'all,
that
y'all
9
can't,
months ago, now
y'all can't
estimated
disagree with Trump,
40,000
man.
Palestinians are
Come
dead.
on.
Nearly 100
Share this to the likes,
hostages
man.
remain.
You know YouTube is messing with my numbers, man. Share this to the people,
There's
man.
not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we
My
got
other
here.
phone, man.
On October 7th, Hamas, a terrorist organization,
No, I want to hear what she's saying about this.
slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that
I'm
we
not even gonna
must
talk about the
chart a
Hamas.
course for a two-state solution.
That's what it's called. I said the
And
Hamas.
in that
Hamas.
solution, there must be
The
security
Hamas.
for the Israeli people and Israel, and an equal measure for the Palestinians.
But y'all
But the
sending
one
stuff,
thing I will
guns
assure you
to Israel.
always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians
Now
have
you want to rebuild the
security,
place that y'all done gave the damn
self-determination, and the dignity that
Israelis
Palestinians
guns to
deserve.
blow up.
President Trump, how
What?
would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about
You guys agree
Israel,
there's something going on over there?
she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party first. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel. Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely
What
well
the heck does that
that
love
these
letter? She be
dictators and
lying,
autocrats
bro.
are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military
It's the
leaders
face
who you
impression
have
people
worked
don't
with
like, babe.
have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president.
I said
who is
Donald
not
Trump is so gangster, he not even
consistently
looking at the
weak
paper,
and
babe.
wrong on
The paper is
national
nothing.
priorities, including
The paper got nothing on
of
it, babe.
upholding and respecting and
She's talking
highest
about
regard
pure
our
madness.
military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down.
You'll keep
Putin
emphasizing
introduced her
it.
last week said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it. Because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way, gets
President
paid a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right, guys. What you think,
She's
man?
doing a good job of staying away from that. First, yo, let's talk about the fact that she act like she ain't got no daddy. Like, that's huge.
You still on
You
that? Huh?
pandering. No, what? That's the absolute epitome of pandering to black people. My mother worked hard. Ma'am, you grew up in a 2-family household, baby. What you mean?
Her mom had only church league, but she never makes it into the ball.
Graduated high school, went to an HBCU. Like, what life of poverty was you living?
Talking about she was 13 when her mom got her first house. She was born in the house.
If I was her daddy, I would wring her goddamn neck. Because what you mean? I had no contribution. I wasn't here.
Police
My mother worked so hard, man. You have a father.
We gotta run that back so we could definitely talk about
She want to
it.
be a single black female. That's what she want to be.
Yo, you guys are. I hope you guys are paying attention to the tactics that they use and how they trying to cater to black people, and so us could be sympathetic. And it's sad that she's doing this, and you guys are not picking up. Not saying you guys, but just overall as beautiful skinned people. Because we don't say black no more. We refer to
And
us
then
as.
in the same sentence, that my mother worked so hard, and Trump was handed $400 million. It don't matter if he was handed $400 trillion. That's what his family worked for. That's what they gave him. Oh well. The same way you pretending to not have no daddy that helped you get everything you got going on.
At least he acknowledged his father.
Exactly. If I was her father, I would ring her goddamn neck. I'm telling you.
You're 24.
I mean, like I said, guys, she's taking the catering to the single black women. She's looking for y'all to get the votes. She's not gonna get it from the males because a lot of beautiful skinned males are not subject into her foolishness. Just the whole Democratic Party's foolishness, though. And
Because what Trump parents handed him money got to do with anything? What they got to do with anything?
Good morning, America. Good morning, America.
yeah.
And he didn't even deny it. Yeah, they didn't give me no 400, but they gave me a couple. Yeah, they did give me a couple of dollars.
A small fraction. He said they gave him a small fraction, and he made it into billions.
They gave, but everybody in New York City knows that Trump's parents made those buildings right here on Francis Lewis and all of that. All of that is their stuff. We all know that.
This is Impact.
They just, like I said, man, they trying to make it the poor versus the rich, and she's standing for the poor, and Trump is representing the rich. And in reality, he's not even like that. Trump could care less. Trump just want to restore order into
And when
the
she's
United
saying,
States.
oh, she's trying to use, she's trying to say that, oh, he's like chummy with dictators, because like trying to say that in juxtaposition to him saying that they're weak and nobody respects them. Because I watch his speeches, he says it often that when he like, oh, nobody respects them, but when I was in office, people respected me. But he's saying that in context to, when you're a president, you need to be feared a little. Yeah. So you need to feel like you can't you can't just come over here and blow this up. You know what I'm saying? You need to feel so like, oh, that's why she's saying, oh, he's like chummy with dictators. And first of all, he couldn't be a dictator, period. If that was the case, he would have been able to win the election last time. He cannot be a dictator, even if he wanted to be. So that's foolishness to say. What he's saying is that as a president, you should be able to garner some type of respect worldwide. And y'all don't have that. And when he was in office, he had that.
So, if you bet, set limits. Never chase your losses. And only bet.
I mean, I don't agree with it because there's nothing that America can show that he presented any level of dictatorship. He just laid down the ground rules. You know what the problem is? He came and took people away from the Barack Hussein Obama dilemma. We was hypnotized and we fell asleep and we forgot what true president operated, being run, how it's supposed to be run accordingly was like. We just infatuated by the soft-spoken black man. Oh my God! And it's like we want that. And you're just not getting that. She's not presenting that to you. She can't even. I could feel it. This her energy. You could tell that she just don't belong there. Look.
Into this conflict, Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so
You'll
much
give us some
worse
water, babe?
than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people
They
dead.
was laughing at
And
us that
it's
she wanna
only
be a
getting
single
worse,
black
and it could
female.
lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're going with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
They
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he a president? But we have a president
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time
I'm
is up.
done.
Just
These
to
men don't even know if he
clarify the question,
allowed. Trump
do
gets
you
on my
believe it's
nerves.
in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to
Why they want him to
stop
pick a
all
side? You see what
these
they doing?
human
Of course.
lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to define one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president,
see your phone?
Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
Oh, you
And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow, quiet please, he would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with
Emissary, I like that.
Zelensky and
The
Putin.
adversary, the
And she
emissary.
did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate as soon as they left. Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is, it has
Did she
been
meet with
about
Putin? That's the
fairness
question
as
to just
America
ask.
always should. As a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to
Maybe I
look
think
out
she's a
for our
man.
friends and not favor our
You know,
enemies.
she got an
because
Adam's apple, you see it?
adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake
you
here.
see it?
The President of the United States
You see
is
it?
commander in
Just got
chief.
white people in that.
And the American
Nah,
people
babe, right
have
there,
a
look what's the
right
move.
to rely on a president who
Say something.
understands the
I love you,
significance
Daddy.
of America's role and
I love you,
responsibility.
Daddy. I don't have my neck is not
in
gonna
terms
look
of
like that.
Exactly,
ensuring that
'cause you
there
don't
is
have an apple.
stability and
She has
ensuring
an
we
apple,
stand
babe.
up for
And
our
she got mad
principles
lines
and
that she
not
been
sell
eating
them for the
cold
for the
cuts her entire
benefit
life.
of
Yeah,
personal
done.
flattery.
You talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin.
He
I
ain't
do want to
answer
talk
a
about
damn
Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I wanted to move on to Afghanistan.
Said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen, for years we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO.
Did she ever meet Putin? I'm still confused.
One of the statements you
She
made
said she met
before,
Zelensky.
if you don't
Zelensky
pay,
5
we're not going to
times.
protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible
She mad that these
jobs
people
he's
respect
ever
him.
seen
I don't know
done.
why you're so mad
I
about
want
that.
to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant
Oh,
moment
he
today
mad at America
honoring
about
the
Afghanistan.
soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from
wants to
Afghanistan.
hit him
I
up
do
about
want to
this.
ask the Vice President,
Trump.
do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
He says the weakest
Well,
thing
I will
America
tell you, I
ever
agree
did.
with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is
$300
not
million a day,
one
bro.
member
We was there
of
for
the
20
United States
years.
military
We've
who
been
is
there
in
since September
active
11th.
duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's
So
understand
they
how
took
we got
they took the
to where
people
we
from
are.
there and then
Donald Trump, when he
sent
was
them to
president,
Ukraine because we still paid the
negotiated
$300 billion
one
somewhere.
of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this
I don't want to
former president
connotate because people are gonna think that I'm leaning towards Trump because I got so much evil things to say about this woman. So let me just hold my peace.
No, what he's gonna say is hilarious. He already talked about it. He's like America's the weakest thing they ever did.
To be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul was the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
Because she recognizing it.
I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
Facts.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently,
you hear how accent just changed?
Career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want.
Are you black though? Just ask that.
But,
are you black?
Yo, babe, but listen to the accent just changed. You're not catching it?
How Donald Trump started. He was land. He owned land. He owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution
of the Central Park Five
of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that. Want better than this.
You can't say that because he was already president with all of that happening.
We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor.
She's still there and admit that she's black though.
Who is constantly
because he didn't ask her that. He said how she feel about him highlighting her race.
Yeah, but she still didn't acknowledge nothing. Like, yeah, I'm black. Oh, yeah, I said that.
Can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President
That's not even
Harris.
America.
Lindsay.
What are you talking
President
about?
Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said.
Exactly.
Going back
Pure
many,
foolishness.
many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park fight, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
I want to respond to that. I want to respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always
not gonna win.
disparaging the American people.
I just
believe in what we can do to
like her arguments
strengthen
and
our
her
small
approach, her
businesses, which is
demeanor
why I
is
have a
just
plan. Let's
you
talk
feel it,
about
right?
our
Yeah, it's
plans
foolishness.
and-
It's ethereal.
and let's
It's not
compare the
real.
plans.
But you just sit here and
I
give a
have
whole
plan
speech about let's
to
just look
give
at each
startup
and Martin Luther
businesses
King.
$50,000
Let's just
tax
look at each
deduction.
other for the what he said?
Pursue
Not the color of our skin, but the context of our foolishness. Nigga, this is America. People are racist. Cut it out. And he's not saying he care if you black or white. He's saying nigga pick a side. Are you black or are you not? Which one? Because you said you was Asian before and you wasn't black. And now you're black. So which one are you? Let me know, and then I'll stick with that. But I'm confused.
$25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy.
To defund the police, she has a plan to confiscate everybody's
Oh,
gun.
yeah.
President Trump,
She has
you
a
have to
plan
move on
to
to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need to.
Lindsay, go ahead.
President Trump,
No, the
President
former
Trump.
president has
No,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're gonna move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I
What you
saved
guys
it.
think?
I did the right
Do you
thing.
agree?
But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But
I hope you guys are
maintain and
catching
grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to it.
the accent she had when he was asking about the black compared to what you're hearing now. Whenever you get a chance, run the tape back,
Tim
people.
Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35.
You said theater, clown show, actors. Hey, man. It's hilarious.
And when I am president, we will do that for all people.
It's hilarious. This is what our people have been absorbed to. So we gotta commentate on it.
And not just a privilege of
I don't vote, but I love the theatrics that come along with
not
it.
get rid of it.
Vice President Harris,
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot.
made a mistake. And number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to do. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or is being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any
Kamala
auto
is
worker,
the
whether
new
it's in Detroit or South Carolina or
Martin
any
Luther
other
King.
place. What they've
Yeah.
done to
This is
business
how I Have a
and
Dream speech today.
manufacturing in
Yeah.
this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's
Martin
afraid to
Luther,
do it.
this was
Between
how I
him
Have
and
a
his
Dream
son,
speech.
they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Yo, is she a black woman?
She's who?
The one that's doing.
Yeah.
Why is she so? What, is that the makeup?
After this.
I just real light skin. I mean, they have like bright lights and all of that too. Makeup.
Nah, I seen her hands, babe. That joint look bad whitish.
Baywatch was the #1 show in the world. When you hear that theme song,
Maybe a show.
This is my joint.
I was gonna have. It was a people were just eating that stuff alive.
it was a wild time, and I was a wild chick. Jason Momoa exploded.
He was in Baywatch?
Anderson was an icon.
Pamela was the sweet girl from Canada who came to get the American dream.
Yeah, man. What you guys think, man?
Really proud of everything I've done. Almost.
I think.
Baywatch was a whirlwind of epic highs and bitter lows.
I think Trump is gonna win.
Everybody was disposable.
I feel like Kamala is just. This stage is just too big for her. It's out of. You could just feel it. She doesn't possess that. I got what it takes to run the.
Everything felt right.
What you said?
So you feel like she's out of her league?
I feel like this is just too much for her
I opened it.
to be on that main stage.
I don't think I can
I
say
think
I'm sorry.
all that pressure of her having to be the face of, I don't think she's
She
able
just
to
really
handle
didn't
it.
think I had it in me to do something. So
I just
I
mean,
did.
Betrayal, A Father's Secret, the all-new season on Hulu.
You're 24. He's 54.
Yeah.
that's nasty.
But this bad wig.
You fired 4 times.
Friday, 2020 is all new.
The 32-year-old former ballerina, the center of the so-called Black Swan trial. Here we go. You haven't spoken out before. Why
That's
did
a
you
bad
decide
wig.
to talk now?
Who?
Stunning all
The European?
2020.
That was a wig on her?
Friday at 9 Central on
I mean, she bald headed, bitch.
ABC News, honored for excellence.
Because when you wear a wig, you gotta get your hair braided. Who braids her hair?
They don't have to get their hair braided. Just clip it up.
40 Emmy nominations. Thank you for making ABC News.
Yeah, but for Kamala's a new Martin Luther King. She just, how Martin Luther King stood up there and said, I have a dream that one day everything will be alright and we'll be judged by the. That's all she did up there today. Talk about pure foolishness.
Great stuff. Fridays on GMA. You're gonna love it.
I think the American people are ready for America to not be racist. Are you dumb?
I think it's time for us to change the page.
Are you dumb?
My sense was that
Yeah, turn the page. I have a dream. You see? All the same thing. Foolishness.
Secret abortion that not even her family knew about.
I
What's
don't
the
know.
relationship like between Harry and William today?
What did people start to say? You look great. Are you on Ozempic?
I told the kids, I said, I'm not even gonna let you eat breakfast until you get your chores done.
She talks about tough love and
Harsh punishment.
Oh, they locked that lady up.
I think
Who's that?
Peterson murdered his wife and his
The
wife.
lady that was on the internet talking about how she don't let her children eat before they finish their chores and all kind of foolishness. And the internet called ACS on her. And I got her ass locked up.
And they took the children.
She in jail. She went to jail.
If you were coming of age in the 1980s, the Brat Pack was near the center of your cultural awareness. But for those of us experiencing it from the inside, the Brat Pack was something very different. If you could have a Brat Pack name not
That's my
exist,
favorite
would
movies.
you? I hated the Brat Pack.
Not favorite. Okay, that's Dragnet. I like it.
What's this?
The Breakfast Club.
I'm not gonna say we're Beatles or anything. Well, we didn't spell
The Breakfast Club, the 105 point.
Oh my gosh, it was a whole movie before that.
Sure. You like watching European stuff. That's why
You
you
watch
stop.
European stuff all the time.
That's why you stop liking European movies. That's why you stop watching movies, because you watch too much of it. Yo, man, I heard Free Willy died, son.
That whale?
Yeah.
Junior, how long ago was that? Wait, why would you think that whale was still alive?
Yeah, but they said that he went back into the ocean and couldn't survive it.
That's what happens to all animals that become inhabitants of our world.
Live from the National
Oh, so this is true.
Constitution Center in
Yeah, but that's for every animal.
Here again,
Oh, I didn't
David
know
Moore
You,
and Lindsay
they
Davis.
steal you away from your natural habitat, put you in a cage, feed you, give you everything. What damn survival skills do you have? None.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks
She
a break
been in
and
this
bringing
position
down the
now.
cost
They
of
ain't do
living.
nothing.
I believe
I
in
mean,
what we
they
can
gonna
do
say as
together.
vice president, what
That
can
is
she do?
about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have
So
the
that as
respect
presidents, they
that we
gonna
so
say
rightly
she
deserve,
can't do nothing. Got to
including
be approved by Congress.
respecting our military
So
and
basically,
ensuring
we're
we
just
have
jacked
the
up.
most lethal fighting force
Copy.
in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you,
Well, yeah,
I
she wants the
started my
government to
career as a
control
prosecutor.
the
I was the
health
DA,
insurance.
I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a
Locking their
prosecutor,
ass up.
I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world they laugh. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
She bleached her skin, babe. Look up Lindsay Davis, babe.
We are here live on ABC with our post-debate comments. I'm Martha Raddatz. It was a lively debate from the economy
Can I change the view?
to Afghanistan. They have historic, John Carl, fiery.
Wow. That was quite a debate. I'm Jonathan Carl here with, of course, Mary Bruce and Rachel Scott.
You said America is racist in Pennsylvania. I experience that every day. Listen, we all experienced it, man. But try to pitch this, come together. We got to kill that narrative. And if black people still falling for that, man, you guys got to wake up. These things will never, ever exist. You know what I'm saying? This is a capitalistic society. It's all about capitalizing. It's about capitalizing on people's ignorance. It's capitalizing off people's finance, and of course capitalizing on the skin color. You understand? They label us black, but we ain't black. We beautiful skin people. You heard? That's the new term, beautiful skin. Right? When they ask you what are you, just say I'm a beautiful skin person. You know what I'm saying? But overall, like I said earlier, I don't think she's equipped to run the world, run America. I don't think she's equipped to sit at the table with a bunch of men. I don't think she's ready to. I just don't think she's ready. I think when I see her laugh, and even every time they bring up the black and they start talking about the black, oh, you was black and this, her voice changed. It's like she just picks up her accent. And then when it's time to get to everything else, she comes back to reality. I don't know if it's like an MK Ultra when something is said, it just triggers and she just gets into this realm. I don't know. But what I do know is that she's not ready. Trump got a lot of valid points. I think they should allow Trump to finish his job, right? He had a game plan. I think he needs to finish it out. And if it doesn't work, then we got to look elsewhere. But it can't be looked upon. That changing of the economy is not going to happen under her. I hope you guys are listening to what she's saying. Pay attention to what she's saying. She says in her one term, which is 4 years, she's going to create 3 million homes. In 4 years, you're creating 3 million homes. There's over 250 million people here in America, and in 4 years, excuse me, you're gonna create 3 million homes. That's super disrespectful. Super disrespectful. That just lets you know that she does not have a game plan. None of them have a game plan. These people been in these positions for so long, and like he says, you got the position now. Let's go down there and let's figure something out. And those things are not being figured out. So, with that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this political campaign. Share this. You know, this is just the first of many. I was gonna come on and do a live and talk my talk. I'll save that for tomorrow. But yeah, continue supporting ROD Podcast, man. We outside. And listen, check this out. You gotta free your mind, or you gonna be left behind. Are you dumb? Or are you dumb? And I'ma holler at y'all.